Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everyone. I'm Sister Amina, and this is Dida Global Network. Join me in welcoming our honorable guest, Mohammed Abduba Dida. Mohammed is a two-time Kenyan presidential candidate and is here with us in the United States. Welcome, Mr. Dida.
Pleasure. Thank you. Pleasure
Thank
being
you.
here.
So today we will be discussing why it is hard for people to keep divine commandments. What challenges make it difficult for people to consistently follow the divine message today, and how can the community better support them?
Bismillah wa salatu wa salam ala Rasulillah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. An astronaut who retired, an American astronaut, was asked about humanity. And he said, when I went up there and I looked down upon the earth, and I realized it's a small place, very small place. Mm-hmm. And another thing is, if you travel and you fly, when you're in your city, the city looks so big. Mm-hmm. Your house looks so big. When you're moving in the streets of your city, things look so big and so wide. But when you travel, you take over, you are in the flight, you go up, you don't see anything. Okay. The higher you go, the smaller everything becomes. So humanity, and as Dida Global Network, we see humanity as just one community, one family. Mm-hmm. People could be so divided by many negative factors. Others could look at their color. Some could look at the country they live. Others could look at the money in their pocket. Others could look at how they interpret the divine message. Many people will come up with many petty factors that divide one family. Mm-hmm. And we see this as a global family is just one family, divided by where you live, but your mother could be in that city, your sister could be in that city, and all of us are one family. Now, one good news is 80% or 85% of the world population believe in one God. Some could call 15% could actually, few percentage could believe that there is no God. Others could say we have a supreme power somewhere. But 85%, close to 85% believe that there is a God. That's good news. That's good news. Mm-hmm. But when you ask this one family who this God is, and one challenge is they have different versions of one God. You see? So some believe in a God and who lives in them. Others believe in a God who is distant, but who controls everything. Others believe in a God. There's a time a student who was working on a master's program traveled somewhere in the Middle East, and he said on the weekends he was walking around and he was attracted by a large gathering. Mm-hmm. So he said he wanted to know what these people were doing, and when he went there, there was a building, and people were going into the building, others were falling the building. So he asked what they were doing. They said they are worshiping God. So where is God? And they said God is inside. So the person went inside, and it was the reproductive organ of a woman. You see, that was God. So this one, yesterday, I think he mentioned this in live television in his country. I think he was in one of the East African countries. So one challenge today is we need to know who is God. I like the idea of Baden-Powell, a British, he was in the British Army. I think he fought the First World War, the Second World War, I think, if I'm not wrong. And he said we have to deal with three things if we need to be on the right track. One, he said, is we have to find out who is God, where is God, you know? And he called this duty to God. And then he said, if God is one and we find where he is and what he wants, or she is, it is, you know, we have to find out this God. And then he said, the other thing becomes, what are the relationship of all those created by this one God? So he called this duty to others, and then duty to self. And then he came up with the scouting movement, and they have these three principles: duty to God, duty to self, and duty to others. You know, it was a bright idea, and many countries took this, registered it by an act of parliament, and they came up with Search for God. Many countries came up with task force, and they came up with and groups that are doing detailed research in this. So one challenge is God. God, we have to answer this question. We have to sit down together. We have to find out who is God. I remember I traveled to India some years back in the 1990s. And I was with a group of white people. We were teachers on camping. And they were handled with respect. I thought this was for everybody, but when they handled my passport and processing it, that time, you know, I never liked how they had treated me. And they could not understand why, but they believe creation of people. Some are created from the upper part, the head of God. Others are created from the chest of God. Others from the abdomen of God, and at the feet of God. So I was actually created from the feet of God, and that's why anybody black is said, oh, he's from the lower caste, and you know. So that is a God. Yeah, I remember in the news we had a tourist who was enjoying in the beaches there, and then he had his drink, and a cow came to drink the drink, and this guy had to stop the cow because where he come from, a cow has specific roles, but where he was then, that community, God was the cow. So he had to suffer a lot. You know, how do you touch God? God wants to bless your water. Some places rats are gods, you know. So this concept of God is one obstacle that needs to be investigated, that needs to be scholarly handled, this is a bull that has to be held by its horn, God, who is God. And then the other thing is, and every group, every country, every community makes laws. And God, if there is a God, then God is the lawmaker. None can make laws other than God. We as the subjects and the creation need to enforce and implement this God, the creation of the message, the laws of this God. So the second thing that we need to find out and investigate is there is a law. There is a divine message from this creator. Yeah. Now, if you look at the many groups in the world today, the same family is divided, and one division has been caused by how they interpret this divine message. And since the creation of man and how history developed, you know, they changed these laws, they changed this divine message, they added the divine message, they subtracted to the divine message, some pieces are missing. So this is an obstacle. Somebody could be reading something, another one could be reading another, you know. For example, maybe you can you can tell me a bit of your history, and before did you believe in God, and now I can see you are dressed according to the divine instructions.
Yeah, absolutely. So I basically grew up in Roseville, Minnesota, in a middle-class household with my mom, my dad, and my sister and my brother. We grew up Catholic, so I was really used to that. But I never got confirmed, which is the last step as you become a teenager, and later started learning about Islam from my first husband in 2018, and continue to gradually learn and make dua, pray about it to God what I should believe. And my journey was a really long journey
Okay.
to Islam, but it was very blessed.
So there's a stage in your life you were a Catholic, a Christian Catholic.
Yes.
Now, when you look at the divine law, as a Catholic, they have 73 books. And then if you look at the Protestants, they reject 7 books. And they say, oh, the Old Testaments are 66. So this is the divine message. Why would the Catholic believe in 73 books in the Old Testament? 27 in the New Testament are common for both. And why should the Protestants say, no, we don't accept this 7? Where is this 7 from? See, that is when you go to the Jewish community, they have their Talmud, they have their books. When you go to the Hindu community, they have books. When you go, now, which is the divine message? And all claim this is from God. So the second obstacle is the divine message. I'm sure God is the same God. And the message that comes from God. If in the United States, you have federal government and the state governments, and you go to the different 50 states and you see the same thing replicated. Orders are taking the same. The chain of command is the same. The federal government, there's no confusion. I think God is also not confused to talk to every group in a certain way. So this is one obstacle that has to be taken care of. Now, the other thing that has to be taken care of, this is an obstacle, is man, the human being, should understand its origin. Where did you come from?
Yeah.
For the 80% who believe that there is a God, associate that there is one man and one woman created by this God, and then we originated from there. There are those who say, oh, no, I came from my mother. There are those who say, I just find myself. So if you don't know who you are, then it is very difficult to live the life you want. Because they say, knowing yourself and knowing your problems is 50% of the solutions that you're seeking. So the third item that we need to, which is an obstacle, is the origin of the human being. Then number 4 is God has created many things, which is the place of man in this system. When you look at science, and science in relation to religion, and there are 8.7 million different creations. So where is the place of man in this ecosystem? What is your role? What is your role? For those who understand literature, if you're analyzing a play, you look at who is the main character, who is all the theme, who is a minor character. There's a character who just appears one time to laugh on the stage and then disappear. There's a character who makes all the main characters, laugh, or they shape this. So what is your role? What is the role of the human being? We need to understand this. Failure to understand this, then if you don't know your role, then you may be everywhere, or you may be nowhere, because you don't know who you are, and you don't know what is your place, what is your role. Then the other thing, number 5, is there's an enemy. There is a main enemy, and there are many small enemies. You must know your enemy. You must know your enemy. So for those 80% who believe in God, they say, the Lucifer is an enemy. Okay, where is the Lucifer? Do you see the Lucifer? Oh, this is an enemy you don't see. Okay, how does he conquer you? How does he attack you? When? What is he made of? We need to know this. Yeah, we need to know this. And this is very important. Then the other thing is, and the human being needs leadership. At a given time, for those who believe in religion, Abraham was a leader, his son Isaac was a leader, his son Ishmael was a leader, Adam was a leader, his son Seth was a leader. When there was a conflict between Cain and Abel, there was leadership to sort out this. Noah was a leader. Their leadership is very important. The community has to be directed. The community must have role models.
Yes.
Yeah. So today, everybody, there's a man in India. He said, today we are not disciplined, because you see somebody running a restaurant, cooking tea, and when the defense system of a government is mentioned, he talks about the defense system. And when health is mentioned, cardiology or dermatology, the skin, and when he's there, he talks about all this. When the space is mentioned and space science, he talks about this. Mention anything, and the person will talk. And then the elderly person say, this person knows everything, but one thing he doesn't know is how to prepare a good cup of tea, which is his business. So we don't, in the field of medicine, you go to a doctor and you tell him, hey, my skin itches, and he tells you, okay, I'm not an expert in skin. You look for that. I am a neurologist. I deal with the brain. Somebody will tell you, I'm not an expert in the digestive system. A gastroenterologist, he says, I am a cardiologist. So nowadays, people, whether they go to school or they don't go to school, whether they specialize or don't they specialize, they have no discipline. Discipline is not there. If you don't know, if you're not a security expert, zip it up. Why should you interfere with what you don't know? Mm-hmm. If you are not an expert in education, zip it up. Just contribute to the community and on any area of expertise. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So leadership is a problem. Mm-hmm. Leadership is a problem. And the other thing is the human being goes through stages of development. From the day you were created, before you were created, what were you before you went into the womb of your mother? Where were you? Mm-hmm. And now you are here. We see, he died. What is death? Where are you going? So there are like 9 stages of human development. You must know which stages you covered and which stages you are yet to cover. Where are you? How are you supposed to prepare? I remember in 2015, I was invited to a convention in Utah, Salt Lake City. And the theme for that year for the convention, over 10,000 people met all over the world. And I was given a 1-hour lecture. And my theme was types of knowledge. If you learn, world peace and tolerance can be inculcated. And I mentioned some 4 points. If this type of knowledge is actually, if we study them, then we can understand many things. So basically, these are the few points. I mentioned like 8, God, the divine message, the origin of man, the place of man in the ecosystem, the enemy of man, leadership, and the stages of development. I think if we look at this and analyze this and study this scholarly and agree on this, then many obstacles can be sorted.
Absolutely.
I think we need to handle each one and separately and go into details. Mm-hmm. This is just a general and an introductory topic where we just introduce what are the obstacles or the challenges affecting man today. Why can't we not understand the divine message? Why can't we not live according to the instruction that God has given? We must know this for that to be possible. Once these are actually not done properly, then things will be haphazard. You want to do things, but you cannot do them. Something is pulling you, you don't know what it is, and you see how things are going, and you just say, okay, can I go this way? Every road takes you somewhere. So this has to be handled, and we will handle these 7 topics, each separately.
All right, wonderful. Well, thank you, Mr. Dida, for that brief introduction. Next week, we will begin our discussion on the first topic, the divine message and its relevance today. So be sure to subscribe to our channel, leave your comments, we will respond, and we appreciate your time. Thank you.